Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling a fascinating set of sources about the future of AI investment. But we're looking at it through a lens you probably wouldn't expect.
Right, the electricity bill.
Exactly, the electricity bill. You sent us materials suggesting that what looks like an investment slowdown is, well, something else entirely, a structural phase change. So our mission today is to unpack why AI infrastructure, we're talking about the data centers powering these large language models, is suddenly shifting
Shifting from a purely market play.
to something more like a semi-public utility, and that changes everything for global investment. So let's just jump in with the big question. Are AI and data center investments actually crashing?
Based on the analysis, the answer is a pretty clear no.
Okay.
The investment, the demand, it's all definitely continuing. But, and this is the key, the premises underlying that investment are changing fundamentally.
So the rules of the game are changing.
The rules are changing. The real question isn't, is the money stopping? It's why has electricity demand, which has always just been a cost factor for tech, a line on a spreadsheet.
Why has it suddenly become this political pressure point?
Exactly.
The sources seem to pinpoint a really specific event, early 2026 in the US. That's when politics intervened because the massive electricity demand from AI was starting to show up.
Directly on household electricity bills.
Yeah, it wasn't abstract anymore. People could see it.
And that event, it just highlights a core structural problem, what the analysis calls the three asynchronous layers.
Asynchronous layers.
Think of it like three clocks, all ticking at completely different speeds. A collision is, well, it's inevitable.
Okay, let's break down those speeds because this feels crucial to the whole argument.
It is. First, you have the OS layer. That's the fast one.
The operating system.
Right. This is AI demand, GPU procurement, investment decisions. It operates at high speed on a quarterly cycle, all driven by investor relations and market buzz. You can pivot almost instantly.
Okay, fast layer. Got it.
Then you have the I layer, the medium one.
The investment layer.
You got it. Investment recovery, subsidies, major contracts. This runs on more of a yearly cycle. It's slower than the market, but it's still pretty adaptable.
And the third one, the slow one.
That's the N layer, the network or nature layer. This is physical reality.
The grid itself.
The power grid, local infrastructure, urban planning, and maybe most importantly, household living costs. The sources call this whole thing the LIO, or the living membrane.
The living membrane.
And this layer moves at the slowest possible speed.
Yeah.
Years, decades even.
So the friction isn't just about price. It's a phase mismatch, a speed mismatch. The quarterly pace of the tech world is just running headfirst into the decadal reality of pouring concrete and getting permits.
That's the precise takeaway. The political system wasn't really choosing to intervene. It was forced to. It had to hit the brakes.
And the pressure that forced it was already building.
Absolutely. The pressure was already accumulating inside that living membrane, the LIO. AI's huge demand was just the final straw. So the political intervention we saw, that's just the result of that pressure finally breaking through.
What started as an engineering problem became an electoral problem.
Almost overnight.
So if this isn't a crash, then what is it? The sources say we shouldn't think of it as success or failure, but as changing gradients, a whole new mode of growth.
That's the key pivot. The analysis suggests AI infrastructure is moving away from that market-only OS.
And toward what you called a semi-public OS.
Exactly. It's a maturation phase.
Right.
And we can actually track this shift along four main structural gradients.
Okay, let's walk through them. What's the first one?
Gradient one is the shift from free expansion to consensus-based expansion.
Meaning?
Well, for years, the logic was simple. We build because there's demand.
And we'll figure out the consequences later.
Right. Now, the logic is shifting to we build because there is pre-agreed local consensus. Investment has to factor in community agreement and power sourcing right from the start.
That sounds like a massive new hurdle. It completely changes the ROI calculation, doesn't it? It kills the speed.
It caps the speed. That's the entire point. It changes the goal from maximizing quarterly growth to maximizing long-term integration.
And that leads to the second gradient.
It connects directly to it, gradient two, from price adjustment to allocation logic.
Okay, explain that.
Electricity starts being just a variable cost, a price signal, because it hits that foundational LIO so hard, it becomes an allocation issue.
It's not how much does it cost, it's who gets how much, for what purpose.
Precisely. And that's the moment institutions have to get involved, because markets are terrible at allocation when a resource gets truly scarce. This legitimizes political involvement.
Which dramatically changes who's in charge. The market wants profit. Institutions want stability.
You got it. And that reinforces the third gradient, from growth speed to stability speed.
So away from the short-term hype.
Exactly. The priority shifts from that IR-driven quarterly expansion model to maximizing stable long-term operation over decades. The metric for success becomes engineering and design, not just growth numbers.
So investment gets leveled out instead of these huge boom and bust cycles.
It becomes a sustained infrastructure project, not a startup gold rush.
That feels like the most profound shift of all.
It is, and it's locked in by the fourth and final piece, gradient 4, the narrative shift, from exception to non-exception.
What's the narrative that's breaking?
The narrative that AI is so important, it's an exception. We have to tolerate the costs it imposes on the public.
That idea is breaking down.
It is. And once that narrative tips, once people decide that AI is important, yes, but it's not exempt from core life constraints like affordable power, that change is almost impossible to reverse.
So let's drill down more on that LIO, the living membrane. Why electricity? Why is that the breaking point? We've seen inflation everywhere. Why couldn't the market just absorb the cost?
Because for the market, it's a price signal. For the LIO, for a household, it's a non-negotiable stressor. The LIO is incredibly sensitive to 3 factors that this AI demand just hits like a hammer.
Okay, what are they?
First is irreversibility. Once electricity rates go up to pay for new grid infrastructure, they rarely come back down. It feels like a permanent tax on living.
A one-way street.
Exactly. Second is non-selectivity. You can't choose not to use electricity.
Right. You can put off buying a new phone, but you can't turn off the fridge.
It's a non-optional burden. And third, there's accumulation. Electricity costs don't exist in a vacuum. They stack on top of rent, food, insurance. It's often the dipping point for a household budget that's already stressed.
So because electricity is foundational to life, the public pushes that pressure right back onto the political system. It's not a rejection of AI. It's a boundary request.
A simple boundary request. Sequence your growth,
Yeah.
but do not touch the foundation first.
So how does this play out globally? I imagine this shift looks very different depending on how strong that LIO is in different regions.
Wildly different. And the sources offer some fascinating comparisons. We can look at 3 models.
Okay.
Let's start with the U.S. model. Collision, then adjustment.
Sounds about right.
Here, the fast OS layer is really dominant, and the LIO is moderately strong. This leads to that fast, very visible political intervention, but only after the conflict is already boiling over.
So a messy public fight and then some kind of reactive adjustment.
That's the path. Now, compare that to the Japan model. Silent restraint.
Right.
The Japanese LIO is historically extremely stable, very resistant to price hikes. So intervention there is slow, and it's often invisible. You won't see big public battles.
So what happens instead?
You get quiet control. Power companies voluntarily suppress prices. The government uses subsidies to hide the real costs. Data center plans are quietly adjusted behind the scenes.
So the market still feels the constraint, but it never becomes a political headline. How does that change the industry there?
It forces data centers toward smaller scale projects and into existing industrial zones where power is already secured. The expansion is controlled from the very start, just stealthily.
And the third model,
Europe.
the European model, constraints as default.
They start with constraints.
In Europe, electricity, the environment, cost of living, these things are inherently political from day one. The LIO is arguably the strongest there. So data center expansion is just fundamentally constrained from the outset.
It has to be high efficiency, renewable based.
Small scale. What looks like a crisis or a break in the U.S. is just the normal starting condition in Europe. They begin where the U.S. is now trying to get to.
So European investment might be slower, but it's also probably more stable, less likely to face these sudden political stops.
That's the critical distinction. The difference isn't if AI infrastructure becomes quasi-public, but when, in the development cycle, that LIO constraint gets hardwired into the system.
So this whole deep dive, it really clarifies that we're not watching a tech bubble burst.
Now, we're watching the maturation of an essential industry. It's the end of an era where the market could just operate alone. Investment isn't stopping, it's just getting serious. It's becoming a real infrastructure build-out.
And if you connect that to the bigger picture, the future of AI investment isn't going to be determined by how important AI is. We already agree it's important. It's going to be determined by how quickly it integrates with the public sphere.
The shift from market infrastructure to essential semi-public infrastructure.
That's the whole game now, demanding higher standards for everything. Design, location, consensus.
We don't have definitive forecasts, of course, but the sources say we can look for specific branching confirmation points, signs that tell us which gradient is strengthening where. So for you, the listener, here's a final provocative thought to mull over.
You should watch for these specific signals. They'll tell you when the shift from AI is an exception to non-exception is becoming permanent.
What I think?
First, if local jurisdictions start introducing electricity tariff categories that are specific to AI and data centers, not just a generic industrial rate, but a custom ADC category, that's formalizing the allocation logic.
A new line on the bill.
A new line on the bill. And second, watch for when governments start defining data centers using language like national security or critical infrastructure. Those are the moments. That's when the shift from market freedom to permanent public constraint gets locked in. So the question for you to think about is, which one of these gradients do you think is going to strengthen in your region next?